that it's a Friday night and a lot of people are out drinking, so we'll excuse them, and I'll probably be going in about an hour, so that's fine. And thanks everybody so much for being here. If I had to say who I'd like to spend my Friday night with, out of all of blame you, for a conversation about the growing connection between game developers and gamers, I couldn't imagine a better group of people than the 5 most innovative and adaptive minds in the industry, which we have right here. So first, I'm going to do the mandatory introductions here. He's gone from team lead of the Age of Chivalry mod for Half-Life 2 to president of his own Torn Manor Studios. Chivalry Medieval Warfare thrived with his determination and one little Kickstarter with total funds of a mere $80,000 into a breakout game that sold more than 1 million copies in less than a year. Could it get any better? Yes, because he's also Canadian.
Are you Canadian too?
So secondly, he was a committed fan and alpha tester, helping the mod he loved so much reach its goal of releasing the highly anticipated standalone sequel. He even made a YouTube channel that was so active and full of good content that he had double the subscriber base of the official YouTube channel for the game. He was hired by Unknown Worlds and is now Carpenter Extraordinaire, which I still don't really understand, and that would be Hugh Jeremy. A writer, actor, and producer on the side, which is a lot on the side. She's not only the Minister of Culture, she's also one of the original 17 founders of Brunette Games, and even the voice for some of the characters in Mythos, which was the inspiration for Torchlight and Torchlight 2. Yes, and it is her real first name, Thunder. Fourth, he was the historian and lead developer for the multi-award-winning mod team who won NVIDIA's $1 million Make Something Unreal, which was for Red Orchestra. Since then, he has been vice president of Tripwire Interactive for the past 8 years, and he's developed hit titles such as Killing Floor, which we personally love so much, with endless multitude of awesome downloadable content, Red Orchestra 2, Heroes of Stalingrad, and this year's Rising Storm. Lastly, we have a delicious late addition to the panel. He created the mod first, which is now largely community-driven, and it's continuing development. His game has been called the Game of the Year for 2012, the 5th best PC game of all time, and the best zombie game ever made. He is now the project lead for Daisy Standalone. In his spare time, he climbs Mount Everest. He was the 42nd New Zealander ever to do so. I'm just a little bit nervous. I'm really used to doing like university type things like this, where everybody's just with their phones underneath the desk. So this is a bit different for me. I'm not used to people actually paying attention. But my name is Shannon. I actually go by Shannon Killer on Twitch and pretty much everywhere else. And I think I'll quote one of the people from Twitch community that I manage, who said, "Well, that's an A-list panel you're with. How did you get to be?" Someone actually said that.
What?
Yes, thank you, Golden, because you're awesome. So I will actually answer that.
It's nice to have friends.
It's a valid point. It's a very valid point. While I am just a stream manager and streamer and YouTuber myself, I think that there's something to be said for having a representative of the payer and player up on this panel that sort of connects you guys with you guys. So sort of a medium. I'm hoping that I can represent both of you and do my job well. I'll also say that I have also done a live stream interview with Dean. That lasted for 3 hours and was completely random. I've also done two interviews with Play Entertainment for their hit game Don't Starve. So if you'd like to see those, then they're on there somewhere. Yeah. So I think that it comes down to being that this conversation is no longer one way between you guys and you guys. We have so much out there for social media. We've got YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Steam communities, Reddit even, some of us, Twitch live streaming, dev blogs, and so on. And it's much more interactive now than it was a mere few years ago. And what I think we're here today for is to look at the benefits of these new opportunities as well as maybe some issues that might have happen with them. So I'd like to get ball rolling. I would like to know what all of you see as the most influential medium out there for each of you for your respective games. What's had the biggest impact on your success?
Biggest impact on our success?
If you have to pick one.
I thought you were going first.
Oh, Dean's got it.
I think
Go for it.
it does kind of depend which point you talk about in terms of development. Like, I think a lot of people will forget, and I don't like to let people forget, that 4chan was one of the reasons that DayZ took off.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you know, when you were
I'm
grabbing-
notorious for mentioning 4chan. It's kind of like Fight Club, you're not supposed to mention 4chan. So I think at the start they were quite influential, but then it's like, depending on the state of your project, it kind of moves through. Like, I think particularly for a lot of the games that are represented here, obviously YouTube and streaming are kind of a massive part of it, but sometimes your game gets discovered in the most random place or unexpected place, like, say, 4chan. I learned lots of things from 4chan.
What were you going to do?
I would go with, again, it does depend on the aspect you're talking about. For example, our Facebook page for Natural Selection 2 is definitely our biggest piece of social media. It's the one we can reach the most people with, but perhaps Twitter is the one that we can engage the most directly on, and we can actually hold very immediate conversations on Twitter throughout the day. Someone can say, at NS2, your game is broken, fix it, please. And we can immediately say, on it, making build 254 right now. And so that immediate communication is incredibly valuable to the point where we actually included it in the game. It's in the main menu.
Really? That's impressive.
Yeah.
I wonder, you're actually really active on Twitter as well. Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, Twitter has been, well, I agree, it's more of a conversation, and that's what's great about it, is that just people are just weighing in, and they'll just, you never get this on Facebook. Facebook is really great for us when we have something graphic to share. It seems to go throughout the platform really well. People like to share it, but if no one is there to have a conversation with you. They're going to be like, why doesn't it have this? And I'm like, well, look at the shiny graphic. There's a lot of like really strange, you feel really ignored actually on Facebook compared to Twitter. Twitter, like, people will actually talk to you even if they're just like, hey, look at the character I made, and I'm like, that's amazing. And we can be a lot more irreverent on Twitter and be a lot more real and just tell people what's going up. It's just, I don't know, I feel like, and I think it's also true we've looked at some of the analytics, and it seems like it spreads a lot more easily because it's just,
It's so instant.
it's just normal, it's just people having a conversation instead of like, trying to post something and see how many hits you get from it, which is a really kind of artificial way.
In 140 characters or less.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any medium that you guys feel, like on the flip side of that might be problematic and you kind of tend to avoid that side of that service?
The forums.
Steve, how are your forums?
They're great. Everyone there, always super nice. I don't think anyone has ever mentioned a bug existing in Chivalry, so that's great. No, for us, there's definitely YouTube that was the best, just because I think it's the most shareable medium. It's the one that you're most likely to send to your friends and pass it along. So we don't have one that we necessarily avoid super much, but definitely YouTube on the previous question.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we avoid anything. We try to use whatever we can, and especially kind of see like what do we have to share, like what can we talk about? Because I'm always pushing to share whatever we can share. If we have something, like, I want to talk about it and show people what we're doing. So it's kind of like if something comes through, it's like what's the clearest way to like get it to the people who care? And, sometimes that's our YouTube channel, but I mean, Hugh is like the star of the YouTube channel. He's like constantly putting out content.
YouTube is great because you can have such a rich experience with people. For example, there are 2 cameras embarrassingly pointed at us right now that are recording this for the Unknown Worlds YouTube channel, and that can take an experience that is limited to this room and take it to a potentially unlimited audience, which is really cool. I think that's amazing. It doesn't have to be limited to whatever room or setting you're in.
I'm just going to be Steve. I love the way the show. How many people are at this show? We haven't got enough microphones. I'm going to be old school. I mean, it may be an indication of the fact that we've actually been around 10, 12 years, whatever it is now. But someone said forums, everyone goes, I hate to say it, but the forums for us is still kind of the big medium. All the stuff like Facebook, YouTube, and everything else. Yeah, we get the stuff out there, but we look for the big feedback through the forums. And that, there's a huge debate about what do you actually get from your forums. Everything from the random whining about, can we edit that?
Constructive feedback.
The constructive feedback. We want that in truckloads. We all want that in truckloads.
It's the policing the forums to get rid of the ludicrous idiot level. As you say on Twitter when someone goes, "Fix it, I'm busted." And you get that on the forums and it goes.
It's so right. It's such a valuable thing.
It's great stuff. When it's constructive. When it's not constructive, all those of you who've been on forums and been trolling the shit out of us.
It was you.
Just stop.
But I think as well, one of the interesting things is so what we found, we didn't have any forums when DayZ kicked off. What it meant was everybody was discussing the game in their own forums. So like NeoGAF, 4chan, Face Punch, places like that. So we actually pushed by accident I guess, the discussion about the game and the community was actually pushed out to communities itself. So it meant that it went, I think, a bit more potently viral because there was no managing it. So we've tried to look at doing that, and I think our forums have been very neglected because we started by going to the community instead of bringing the community to us. And I think there's pitfalls with that approach, but there's also some benefits. One of the benefits is that people are always talking about our game on other forums because there's no real central place to talk about it.
But is that an indication of where each of us started doing this stuff?
Yeah.
We started doing it on forums, because there wasn't half of this stuff around. Come on, Samuel. Steve, where did you guys start on the forums or? When you first got rolling?
The very first stuff we started putting up was on like ModDB, IndieDB.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And then from there we had our forums and stuff like that. Forums are still really useful for us in terms of input. It's hard to get a lot of input from them because people don't really share what they read on the forums. So like you'll write a message and 50 people will get to it. But the amount of input you get on your forums is ridiculous and so much more detailed than what you'll get usually, for us anyway, on YouTube or Twitter comments.
Yeah, definitely. That's where you explore an issue or something good or not so good in depth. And and I feel really lucky that we have devs somewhere in the stream who just really are on there, and we can make it a big deal to check in with those people and comment, especially when just rumors are running rampant. Someone was logging and be like, guys, it's actually this, and then have a link and stickies, which help all of us to then you can share the sticky on Twitter or Facebook, especially when people are asking, hey, what is this? And it's a common question. You can go right there and show them, and it's a really deep conversation. A lot more detailed ways you can. So it's been really, and our fan site, which is run by a really good guy, Webster in Japan, and that was always really helpful for us to just go through and see what people are talking about and what they're excited about, and he would check in with us just to say, what's coming up, where are you guys, and we just kind of tried to work with him as much as we could to be able to set things up to roll out whenever it was going to be time, so that he was ready, and that was a huge source for me, just to see what people were really connected with.
I think it's interesting to note that everybody on this panel is actually more of the indie game realm than the bigger AAA, large studios like that. So it makes me think then, do we see an interactive nature of the social media as an opportunity for indie developers to level the playing field versus AAA titles and the caliber of success in terms of potential exposure to be brought sort of balance now versus what it was before? Without social media, do we see a bit more of a strong hand in the AAA world?
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, someone else go first. I'm getting ahead of
I
myself.
wouldn't say it balances the playing field so much. I mean, we can't ever compete with the ad dollars that a massive company is going to throw at whatever they have compared to us with 30 people and me on Twitter being that's just it doesn't really level it. But what I love about it is that you get the tone of who we are as a company. We're going to actually talk with you and joke with you a lot, and whereas if you like the bigger company you have, the more infrastructure there is, the more restrictions there are on just having, everything has to be approved by everybody, and it has to be like, well, did you get the media training? Well, you can't, talk about that if you haven't had media training. It's like, that doesn't really exist for us, and I mean, and I'm really happy that it doesn't, because we get to just be really candid and talk like normal people to other normal people, and I think that's a huge part of who we are and what makes our company.
Yeah, I just have to say, you're talking about us being candid on forum and things like forums and stuff. I mean, there's one of our guys sitting in the back of the room who's one of his jobs is to stop us being candid.
I think he's wetting himself right now.
Yeah, he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
That's important too.
He has to keep some of us in line. We're back to that about forums.
That's what I do with an eyebrow raise in the middle of interviews, like.
It's true. I was interviewing Rick's office the other day, and Wanda was sitting there watching every question.
But if you're talking about volume and stuff, I mean, who gets more airtime on Reddit, for example? EA for having a crap day, or us for doing something good. You see sort of someone hates on Battlefield for something, or Origin, or whatever. And you just see this monstrous pile of stuff spewing, and it's still. I mean, we go like, however hard we try, we're not even going to make a dent in that stuff. So even in that social media world, I don't think we're not going to compete like that. We have to do it differently. And a lot of that's about, you say, it's about actually interacting with people, so what they feel is a conversation going both ways. How else are we going to do it? We're sure as hell not going to do it without dollars.
Right.
So I kind of burst out in the affirmative there, and then two people sort of went for the negative.
Yeah.
I present my affirmative here and say I don't care if the Call of Modern Battlefield Twitter handle has 2 million followers and the Natural Section 2 handle has only 12,000. That's not relevant. What's relevant is the fact that before, to communicate with anyone, Battlefield went, or whatever, I actually love Battlefield, so I shouldn't use an example. But whatever game, it's got a big publisher goes out and says, okay, here's my $50 million TV ad campaign for my game that's out there. That's my communication to people. And the question was, has it leveled the playing field? Well, back then, Natural Selection 2 goes, well, we have to kind of spread through forums, and that's great, it spreads value. But now we actually have a communication medium where almost anyone in a developed country on this planet can pick up a device and say, I like the idea of app NS2, I'm going to connect to that right now, now I can receive it. So it absolutely has leveled the playing field in the sense that before, there was no way games of our size could connect with people on that level. Now they can, and even if Call of whatever has 2 million followers, it's not relevant because before it was like here and zero, and now it's a hugely high quality amount and still a big amount. So,
well, also as well, I think it's made it possible to do that viral thing. So with DayZ, it went from having not a single person playing it to 2 million players in 12 months. And there was no, like I said, we didn't even have forums for a long period of time. And so that becomes within the realm of the possible, and not a single dollar, even as of today, has ever been spent on an advert or any public relations or anything. But I also think as well, to get back to the 2 million people following whatever some big game, there's also whether those community members are active, and I've heard this from a few journalists, and I know it's the same for the games represented here, is they get really passionate people contacting them. Like I know even IGN said about the Community Choice Award we got at Gamescom was, and I saw like Call of Duty and all that pitching their games for the award, and they had far more followers and stuff like that, but how many of their followers are actually active, particularly maybe active on the PC, so...
Yeah, like I said, you hit the key point, which is actually it's about the quality of that communication. There are 2 million people who, somewhere along the line, have managed to get attached to an EA or whatever it is. Do they pay attention? No, probably go straight to spam. It's, thanks, I wanted this one time because there was a registration button, I clicked it by mistake.
The brutal truth.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. We've had this in the past where I think it was back in the original Red Orchestra days. So 2006, I think this was, and there was something like the IGN Choice Awards. It was voting online, and there was a Call of Duty in there and whatever else in there, with mega million budgets, and we won.
Yeah.
And you're going, because, and there was actually, cries on the, on the comments when they saw who had won of, oh, they cheated, they must have cheated, they got their fans to vote.
and it's like, yeah, that's because our fans give a shit. And it's, so there's a huge thing about the quality of that communication. If you're communicating really good communications with 10 or 12,000 people who are going to go out and evangelize and tell all their friends and buy the game for their friends and everything else. Or there's 2 million people who actually don't give a rat's ass.
Yeah, that's a relationship instead of clans.
Yeah, I was trying not to get all poncy with the words, but yeah. Ponce one But you're right, it is.
You build lifelong fans as well. It's like I buy anything that Paradox put out, like all their DLCs. It's just like good click, click, click. And I mean, I don't even use half of them, but I like their stuff, and so I buy them. And I think sometimes that really rich communication can generate that lifelong fan. Which if EA or that could do that, I know they would, and they want to conquer the social media stuff, but there's so many barriers, so many people in the way. Like I remember when we worked with Warner Brothers Games, like they want to talk to their people, but because of the way that corporations are all set up, you have to get so many approvals before you can even make a Twitter post.
Yeah, it's what Wanda said. I mean, it's got to clear through about 5 different channels.
See if it's branded. Yeah, is it branded?
I mean, isn't it remarkable? You've got access to the Rinnick Twitter account in your pocket right now. Tornbad Twitter account, NS21. I mean, it's... okay. Hey, isn't that amazing? I mean,
I'm old, I don't know how to use it.
So here's the thought then. As you grow, and you want to obviously increase in size and in your customer base and everything, how are you hoping to tackle the same issues? I mean, you have followers of 10,000, 12,000, 50,000, 100,000 on Reddit or on your forums or whatever. What if that gets to 2 million for you? Are you afraid that you're going to lose that relationship?
Well, I think Notch is a good example of that. So he's got like 1.2 million followers, and he's not frightened to get into an argument or post something relatively controversial. So I don't know about anyone else, but I think my process is really just to stumble around until the answer falls in the right way. I don't know whether I'm not really skilled enough to approach it from any better angle.
Yeah, I'd be way more concerned about putting out a good game, because that's what's going to keep people. Because your Twitter account isn't going to win or lose if your game is great or if it sucks. Like for me, all that stuff is there just to support something that I love and think is great. And if you're not putting out a great game, then what does it matter if you have how many Twitter followers or however many giveaways?
But I mean, there is I don't know if you're deliberately alluding to it, but there is a point as as each of us grows where we've kind of got that big strong following, 1 million, 2 million people, whatever it happens to be. But how do you grow beyond that? How do you start to push out? How do you get the awareness out to people who've never heard of Killing Floor? Bastard. How do you get the message out to all those people? And huh? Yeah. By Killing Floor.
Wait, I gotta tweet that.
Yeah, I'll be looking on the Steam stats in the morning to see if that worked. But yeah, I mean, there is that flip side to it, which is that it's a really strong relationship. But that means it's kind of a known pool. I mean, Notch is a mad exception who's managed to, with Minecraft, managed to achieve this enormous, just mad level of people listening to it. But for the rest of us, mere mortals.
Speak for yourself.
Okay. How do we expand beyond that? How do we? I mean, we're toying around. We're doing pieces of advertising and stuff now, and just trying to find ways that don't cost millions of dollars to get beyond the fan base we've got now. And it's kind of hard. I mean, Steam is an obvious answer. There's 40, 50 million people on there these days. But still, how do you actually get the message out there to those guys? And we're still playing with that, still struggling with it.
Well, one of the most bizarre parts of our project for me was the first time we considered doing marketing was how we could come up with some kind of marketing campaign to stop people buying our alpha, because we're very worried about supporting enough service. And that's when I realized that the world had gone full.
What?
This is a very bizarre situation to be in when we're employing marketing people to figure out how not to get people to buy the game.
I would just love to be.
I know.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Dean. So you want to use our marketing services to do what? To stop people buying the game.
Just please make them stop.
And basically, all we could come up with was to try and price it out of people's range. And we couldn't do that because we'd already gone out and said to people it was going to be cheap.
Shannon, you asked if it could scare us, growing beyond what perhaps we think we can manage by having the company Twitter account and phones. I think it's tremendously exciting, not scary. And the reason I say that is because when you've got two-way communication, you realise very quickly that the smartest people aren't in the room, that there are people that understand how Natural Selection 2's Lua scripting language works and how even Natural Selection 2's closed source C++ Spark engine works way better than the people at Unknown Worlds. So if I have 2 million people out there telling me what Unknown Worlds is doing wrong, that's tremendously exciting because time and time again, the fact that we can go two ways with this communication means that people out there point out that Unknown Worlds is doing something stupid and how we could fix it. And we go, we think we're fairly clever, we hope we're fairly clever, but everyone out there, the collective intelligence is just so far beyond. So bring on 2 million people that can tell me I'm stupid.
But there's another thing. You mentioned Minecraft and Notch, and you talk about you guys doing the alpha and all the rest of it. There is a thing that you did as a mod, we did as mods, which is where you put stuff out and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because you can get that feedback. I mean, okay, you've got to have the digital distribution in this day and age so that you can actually undo any cock-ups, but you can put new stuff out and try it and see what people think. And actually, they're going to tell you. And it's not going to be a sort of rabid screaming on Reddit. It's going to be, in our case, back to the forums and people going, yeah, that works really well, but the new flamethrower, it's horribly overpowered. What were you thinking? We're going, we thought we got it right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll kind of rein it, and you adjust. And that's one thing. If we're brutally honest as Tripwire, we know that back in the mod days, we used to listen so carefully to everything that came back at us. And as we've grown, I hadn't really thought about it, to your point, as we grew, there came a point a couple of years ago where we were struggling to listen to everything coming in. And I think we actually had to stop. And we realised this, and Gary who sat at the back, who's now fallen asleep, I think. Gotcha. You're not.
It's tweeting, yeah, right.
Oh, good. God knows what you're tweeting, I don't want to know. But as you remember, we came back to that phase where we suddenly realised that we'd kind of stopped listening. Not deliberately or anything else, but we were so busy with everything else.
Saturation.
Huh?
And saturation.
It's not that what was coming back at us was saturation, it was that we had so much else going on.
Okay.
And we were so overstretched. And we had to stop, and for a whole period of about 3 or 4 months, actually the guy sitting in the back there, he's the one who reeled in a whole pile of stuff, sifted through. These are the things we must listen to. We've got to listen to and act on some of these things. And that was a sharp reminder that you can get overstretched for whether it's saturation of the volume of stuff coming back. In that particular case, it was us just getting overstretched with everything else we had to do that we were actually coming away from the forums and not spending the time there doing that stuff. So it is hard.
That's where I like Reddit, because people can upvote or downvote stuff they disagree or not agree with, and they also post a lot of memes, so it wins.
So it's like a filtering process, a natural filtering process, so you just pay attention to the relevant ones that are popular.
Yeah, I just check the top threads, and then I'll just check which are the most popular comments, and also vice versa, sometimes which are the most unpopular.
Oh, interesting. Actually, let's talk about that a little bit. Game development. Do you find that using all these forms of social media with everybody here, giving you feedback about your mods or about your development, what you've got on your beta, whatever's going on at the time, do you find that it might slow down the process at all, or do you find that it speeds it up, or is it some weird mangled mixture of both?
It's hugely important. Yeah, when we did our beta, we had a smaller subset of the forums, and it was massively helpful. It was key to making Torchlight 2 what it is. So yeah, wouldn't have. And I was even thinking it was the saturation levels, we had to, just to be able to support it all and to make the changes and really look for the quality of responses of people who are going to put in the time and play it, enough to give us really deep feedback.
Yeah, but that's sifting through.
Yeah.
That's one of the real challenges. Is figuring out. It's kind of finding the useful stuff amongst the noise. When you talk about something like Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
But
it was and it was a subset. I would say it was we had a special private beta forums, and they were, incredibly important and helpful.
I think as well, sometimes it can be really dangerous. An example perhaps is Notch with his game he was developing, and he wanted to show people he was developing on stream, but then some of the feedback he was getting was too much, and people go into the tiniest detail. I'll say a particular word, I might misuse it slightly, and suddenly it's all over Reddit, and people get angry, and they bring it up for the rest of your life, you know.
The word tedious comes to mind.
Yeah, I think it's even worse than that. I think sometimes the wrong comments at the wrong time in development can cast a dark cloud over the whole development. And if you're someone like, say, Notch, then that just means, you know, it's like, why am I doing this? It's too short.
What were you going to say, Keith?
I think that a lot of other industries would just absolutely kill to have the feedback that the games industry have. Like if you're making a vacuum and you just want to know like what people think of what it's like to vacuum their houses and you just can't get feedback, you gotta pay focus groups to give you feedback. We have people so much like we can't get this many people in the beta. Like we can't allow you all in yet. I think it's a great problem to have. It does come with some negatives, like you know, if you let that eat into you, or if you got to be really careful with what you say, because people will not only take what you say wrong, but they'll make assumptions, and then you got to track all that down and try and fix it. But it's a great problem to have, where you have people who are just desperately want to communicate with you, and it's really tough. But if you communicate properly back with them, it's amazing, and that's why I think we have it really good in this industry.
So thinking about opening up floodgates, creating opportunities, for example, starting a dev blog, or if you start making videos on YouTube, or whatever your case might be, if you get to a point when you've just got so much on your plate as developers that you kind of need to back away from any of that, do you feel guilty? Do you feel a loss of accountability? Do you feel like you're, you know, not doing your duty by the people that sort of have come to expect these little bits of information across these sites for you? Yes.
I think it's important to remember your own voice in it too. Sometimes when you're taking in so many voices, you can actually forget what you guys set out to do, what you wanted to do, and you get swayed by a million people, however many you have, talking to you, telling you what they want to see, what their vision is for the game, and they're so excited about it that sometimes you can lose what it is that you want to do. So if you can keep that and talk internally, make sure that you're giving enough time to process what they're saying, how you feel about that, and then react.
I really like your question, Shannon, because I think at the core, if you're going to be using two-way media to communicate with people, and if you're doing it truthfully, you're having a real human conversation, which naturally means you're developing a real human relationship with whoever it is you're talking to. As you get more people talking to you, it's only natural as a human you start to not be able to process all these relationships. And one of the things that cuts me personally most deeply is, say, I'm standing on the PAX show floor out there, and a Natural Selection 2 player walks up to me and says, "Hi, I'm X from the forums." You know, and we've spoken before. We might have engaged on Twitter, and oftentimes it will take me 3 seconds to process. And here's a hint about Australians: they'll use the word "mate" a lot in this situation until they worked it out. And it's like it just really upsets me that I can't connect. There's not enough connections to be able to maintain all these points, because you are having real communications with these people on forums or Twitter or whatever. I do genuinely care about what, say, real example, someone like Blitzthose, who's a forum member, I don't know what else, forums, he might think, but if he walked up to me right now down this corridor, I wouldn't know who he was at first, and that does really frustrate me, because you are building relationships.
But that's literally tens of thousands of people. You can't expect that from your
No, you can't, but it's still frustrating.
But you still,
It's upsetting.
still beat yourself up.
I don't even bother learning the names of all the developers on my project.
I'm looking at a job in the games industry. I feel valued.
I think I actually call one of the guys like New Guy 1 and New Guy 2.
Everyone's me.
It's a PR disaster right here. That's why we have PR people. But yeah, I think, I don't know, I think that I take a very pragmatic view of it. I think we actually probably need someone like you on our project, so I don't end up with these tremendous conflicts on Reddit where I'm forbidden to use the computer for a while. I use the R word when talking about something.
Actually, about that, how do you guys manage like etiquette and social snafus, since everything's so impromptu, so instantaneous, not filtered, nothing, none of that stuff. You guys don't have the corporate bureaucracy to back
Do we have a bleep on this thing?
Oh,
We're maybe about to need it.
you're pushing all the red buttons right now, Shannon.
But like, how would you manage that? I'm sure you've all encountered it. I'm sure each of you have had at more than one occasion where you put your foot in your mouth.
So to paraphrase the question is, have we ever fucked up on forums? Jared?
How long ago and why?
forums a lot, yeah, there comes those moments when we all know we do it. And I actually say, you know, because we've been through a few games releases, I actually say to the whole crew, just before, you know, on run release day, okay, we're releasing a game on whatever today, we're going to get some great press and some good stuff, and you're going to get some utter crap. Some people are going to come at you to tell you that your model of an MG42 sucks ass.
That's the word they'll use.
Yeah, oh, if you like. And you tell people, just don't react to it. Because you know a lot of it's been done just to stick a fork in and see what happens. But we have to admit, yes, there have been those times when you just go, you little shit. Yeah, and Jared comes around going, what have you done? So yeah, I mean, yes, you do all these things. You drop a release date by you know, or it'll be out next week. Or you insult somebody, or you word it, even just wording it wrong.
Yeah, and someone feature that's been cut. You announce a feature that's been cut.
That's a good one.
I've never done that. Have I? No. Yes, I have announced a feature that we already cut before. Oops. Wait, sorry, yeah, what's that?
That's exactly right. I mean, I noticed that the entire other side of the panel is pretty quiet over there. but
Well,
I'm
I just
sitting
feel
here
bad because I've got a
yeah.
long answer to that question. I want someone else to go there. The one that has never screwed up.
No.
I don't think that's.
What's the worst that's happened?
I'm not going to start with the worst now.
Let's know dice. I think, which is something I said, I think. Oh, okay, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. That was, she's uncomfortable.
We gotta hear the story now.
Yeah, you built it up.
No, I think it was, I'm trying to remember, but I think it was just, it was funny because this came up over this morning at a different panel, but about like when are you on the record, when are you off the record, and this is like, we're talking about relationships with press, and especially if you have like I tend to do like pretty good relationships with people and like genuinely enjoy everyone in the industry, and then they're like, well, hey, is the Torchlight 2 coming out this year? And I'm like, yeah, it's nice, for sure. Like, no, because I'm like, everyone has to be present because everyone has a ton of work because we're small teams. Like, everyone has to be, you know, one guy without, like, on maternity leave, like, productivity just, like, bogged out. So I was like, yeah, as long as we're all there. And I think it was even over email, and it was just, like ongoing conversation and, like, a really long thread. Yeah, and then it wound up, like, on the talk show or something. Oops. Yeah. And it was just like, and then all of Twitter was like, but you said if someone died, who died? I was like, oh, I'm sorry, it's really offhand, tongue-in-cheek comment to make. I was obviously not intending to give, like, if someone actually wanted me to give them an official answer. I wouldn't bring mortality rates into it.
But there is that point though, we're actually calling this actual human relationships. When you've got relationships with people, you chat with them, you chat with someone on the phone, you text them or whatever, and you say something dumb.
Yeah.
With a friend, you hope that they're going to go, what did you just say to me? And you go, oh, no, sorry, I didn't mean it like that, I meant it, yeah. But on some of the forums, you know, how many times I must have seen just too many times over the years where you say something dumb and someone's going to run with it and they're going to enjoy it and take it and stick it up your ass the rest of your life.
I enjoy that.
Isn't it fantastic when people can do this to us these days?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
because we used to be able to screw up this badly, I don't think. I mean, I couldn't cause massive damage to the reputation of the company I work for with what's in my pocket right now. That blows my mind. It's amazing. Like, it's just so because, okay, if we're having if we're having these human conversations that go two ways, they can't be very human if everything you always say is perfect. In fact, a large proportion of the Australian Natural Selection 2 community hates my guts right now. There are forum threads right now that wanker, who does he think he is, blah, 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 with these American and European NS2 players going there saying, no, he's not that bad, he just, he didn't mean it like that. Anyway, I said something bad, whatever. The point is, actually, I guarantee it, there are people that have hated my guts at some point in the natural selection 2 community that now I get along really well with, because we're human and we can have those conversations and screw up. It makes the relationships more valuable and more meaningful than if I'm going. The release state will be when the game is in an optimal state, which may be in the medium term. No, screw it up.
I definitely think in terms of, I don't talk about our CEO, he doesn't really mind too much if I make a screw up, because I think the old saying that, any priest is good priest is kind of true. But where it does hurt is like you're saying, when you have a face-to-face relationship. So I remember when I was really critical of Windows 8, and I read through all the comments that I'd made, and then I looked at my schedule for the next day and realised I had a face-to-face with 8 Microsoft people. And you all know that you're going to this meeting and they can't say anything bad, and so it's just that's really awkward. But sometimes as well, it can get a little bit inappropriate. I was at Camp 3 on Mount Everest, very high up, on oxygen, and I had these 2 guys come over and they're like, oh, you made DayZ.
Wow.
When's it coming out? I actually told them to
In the wake of there's a whole other split side to this though, because we've got unfortunate events like Fez too. So with things like that, can we really believe that any press is good press? I mean, there's got to be a threshold at some point. Do we think that, or is it still just that no matter what happens, it's all good?
No, it's not all good, because you can destroy relationships. And if we're harping on about the fact that we are having a relationship with an ever-growing pile of people, if you destroy that, if you do something that's really going to upset that, I can think of anybody here play EVE Online? Yeah. What was it? A couple of years back, there was some near catastrophic, silliness with what was it, a monocle, and some really great pronouncements from the CEO over in Iceland. And I believe that cost them somewhere around 10 to 20% of their subscriber base. Then it hurts. And you've got to remember, all these people here who are playing EVE Online, it doesn't matter the fact that you've never been on the forums or anything else. If something like that happens, and what's coming out from the company is kind of, not necessarily deliberately, but just kind of vaguely insulting, vaguely put down, vaguely, you sort of go, you're a bunch of arse. It's not going to make you want to carry on playing their game.
Bad news travels faster.
Yeah, and I think when you're at the top, there's nowhere to go but down. And I think in Eve's
I'll let you know if we ever get to the top.
I think in Eve's case, definitely there's a symptom of that, particularly when you're operating at a very high level for a number of years and a lot of growth and stuff like that. Like you say, it's easy to make a screw up, and then it travels really fast and it hurts your bottom line.
Oh yeah.
So I think what we'll do right now is we're going to open up the floor to questions. So if anyone has any questions for anyone, you can come up to the mic if you'd like.
Just out of here, probably I can answer here, I mean.
Okay.
So you were saying earlier how, when you're on the record, when you're off the record with media and that kind of stuff, I think part of that is also responsible of the media person realizing information you may hear in conversation is privileged and not really acceptable to being published. So you think it's, it's not your fault you said something off the record, off caller. It's that whoever you said it to was the wrong person to have said it to because they are not professional. Who should say, okay, they said this, it's not official.
Yeah, it's a tricky line, and I mean that's more of like a press developer than developer player conversation. But it is tricky. And I was hearing things this morning about like legally anything that you say, unless you explicitly say off the record, is publishable. The question was, do you want to go ahead and do that if you're going to burn bridges with your sources? But I mean it is. But there was another term that I thought was really interesting. And I feel like this is where 99% of the relationship building is where they call it just like background. And so you're not providing a sound code. You're just being like, I'm just giving you like a thumbnail of like what's going on here and where we are.
But I know when I did my media training with the army, like they always told us that there's no such thing as off the record. Like we used to talk about, there's a newspaper in New Zealand called the New Zealand Herald. So we talk about does it pass the Herald test? You know, could you stand seeing what you're saying as a headline on the national newspaper on the news? So I use the same philosophy. Anything I say anywhere, even if it's in an email outside of the company, I think, am I okay with that being on the front page of Reddit or something?
Totally.
You've got to take the view that, I mean, sure, there's those press that you work up relationships with and you learn to trust them. But the other 99.9%, you've got to take that assumption that, that there is no off the record. If it's something that's that interesting and that good and is going to fit their particular niche audience.
Well, that's a good journalist, I think. A good journalist is someone who finds a good story and publishes it no matter what. Like, where would journalism be if people were like, oh, okay, well, the government doesn't want us to broadcast that bit of information.
It's a very subjective. That's a very subjective.
But I mean, that's a different conversation. And that was totally like my own fault. But at least it wasn't something I was like, this wasn't something awful. Like, I wouldn't do something as dumb as like announcing a feature that we cut.
Shannon, before we go to this question, would you mind if I came back to your question immediately before? Because I imagine there's some people in this audience that quite like the idea of game development and being a public, and encountering some of the stuff we encounter. You asked, are there negatives that can come from the two-way street? And is it possible that bad things can happen when we engage with large audiences? And the answers that we discussed immediately were that yes, we can mess it up really badly by having these channels, but there's another thing that can happen because it goes two ways, and that is that damage can be done to the psyche and the people that are on the receiving end on the developer side, and there's a lot of game developers who will speak to the fact they've received death threats, and that's a very real thing. And I will openly admit that as a grown human male, some of the stuff I've received from communities has made me cry. And it's just a fact that if we do get up on this pedestal where we can talk with all these people at once, at some point your armour is going to shatter. And so if any of you are thinking about using this two-way street, I encourage you to do it, but prepare yourselves because you're in for it, and stuff will happen.
Yeah, well, that's why I said earlier. I tell them, the whole crew when they're ever about it was a big you're going to get some crap back. Because at the end of the day, we're probably the thicker skinned ones. And there's plenty of people who are working just in AAA and among the other companies who are kind of insular, who are not great people. Is that English?
Sure.
We'll do it this time, right?
With your accent, mate, anything's English. It's all good.
And it makes me sound intelligent.
Yes!
Which is probably the thing that does. But yeah, it can really hurt people. I mean, the fact that someone says your MG42 model sucks ass. Some people, some of the developers will actually sit there going, oh God, what did I do wrong? And you just see them curl up.
They reevaluate their whole lives.
Oh, it's
What you say, you should all be ashamed of yourself.
There was like a couple days when we were, I think it was like around when we were launching, and I just had to step away. It was so bad. It was and it was just like a small vocal minority. But I mean, mostly when that stuff comes in, we try to, you just know that there are those people that just need to say terrible things to make themselves feel better. So we do dramatic readings. Wow.
Sorry, I totally interrupted for asking the question.
As you notice.
Hi, I do full stack development for websites for web applications, and part of that means usability testing and figuring out how usability works. And so my question to you is, does this style of distributing to the community and getting feedback, do you think that this replaces standard usability testing? What I'm talking about is like map clicking or eye tracking or things of that nature.
No, it doesn't replace standard usability testing. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because, just stuff like blind testing. We'll pull people in with a new game rolling. We pull people in who never played it. We did it with Killing 4 years ago. And yeah, there's all sorts of other stuff we do, like tour and beta testers and stuff who've played the game and are looking at the nuances of the game. But no, you've got to put the thing out. For us, it's absolutely essential. It goes out to people who have not touched it.
It's usability testing. It's okay. Here's the game. Go kill some zombies. And if they go click, and they're in and they're shooting stuff, we're doing something right. But classic example. For those of you who play Killing Floor, there's a trader mechanic in there at the end of each wave, and we had one group doing usability testing, and they sat there and they cleared the first wave, and went, "What do we do now? Oh, it's so quiet." I still sort of sit around for a bit. They had no idea that there was a trader there. There was a big fucking arrow at the top of the screen going, "Go this way." Didn't register at all. So we get into the second wave, and we've still got a pistol, and the monsters, and you're going. And you just want to, and when you're watching, you just want to stand there and go, no, go to the trader. But no, so, I mean, for me, the answer is categorical. Yeah, beta testing is one thing, all that feedback you get through the forums, all of that's good, but you cannot skip. Just the most basic style of testing. It sounds really dull and boring, but you've got to do it.
This explains a lot for us, because what is standard usability testing? But I think it's like, we all be the same way, Steve. You didn't do that.
You bring like friends and family testing, and like not walk them through it, and just like sit back and be like, are they gonna know to go over there? But it's really important to find out, like, yeah, if they're not seeing the giant blinky thing, like we had ended up like changing the way a lot of like notifications worked, just because what was obvious to us after looking at it for years was not obvious to someone sitting down who was totally unfamiliar.
Because that was Gamescom for us, this recent Gamescom. So I sat here going like this, like wow. and actually as a result of that, we ended up with a massive, basically dropping our whole bunch of our sprint objectives to say that we were going to change a whole bunch of systems. So it definitely helps. But, and this is the same thing I've been saying to a lot of localizations companies that are coming to us. They're saying like, we want to do localization. We're actually pushing all our localization out to the community. So the ability for companies to make money, I think it can be challenging because you have to identify what role that company can provide that can't be provided from finding friends and family or community or something like that and going out and doing it. Maybe it's approaching people like, companies to help them setting up the process.
Yeah, PAX is always huge for us for that too, because you just watch how people play, especially if they're not familiar with the game. You talk to them and you see what resonates and what doesn't, and what they gravitate to, and even like what weapons and what characters they want to play the most. It's really fascinating.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's pretty much answered my question.
Awesome.
I have a little follow-up.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left though, so it's kind of really quick, sorry.
Back of the line, let's go.
Hi.
How do you sometimes respond, like, a lot of people often go to Metacritic and they'll make a snap judgment based upon those scores without any context about who made the review themselves. How do you respond to people who then vent off on their forums about something like that?
Wow, our forums are really good at just talking. I mean, we have a really good forums actually, like really amazing people, and there's a lot of kind of like self-management that goes on. And if someone said that, like our forums would be like, you played it, dude? Why don't you try the demo? Like it would. I mean, it's almost feels kind of like a troll. I think it would get shut down pretty fast.
I mean, Metacritic, the guys who run Metacritic actually used Killing Floor as an example last year, I think it was. Metacritic score 72, user score 89. People come to forums. Well, to be honest, I mean, the catch with that one is that most people are going to go to Metacritic, it's a 72. They aren't going to come to our forums and say anything anyway. They're just going to go, and go away.
That is a lot of work if they're going to like look at Metacritic, they're going to come and like register to log in and be like, jeez guys.
Thanks. Hi.
Hey there. So this is touching a little bit on the issue of the kind of vitriol that you can get when you say something and then people go, oh my god, they said this, and you get a bunch of flack for it. It really sucks. However, do you find that the opposite is also true, where I'm finding that it used to be, for example, like really old, like we're talking 1990s, games come out and the publisher is on the front, and then tiny little text on the back of the developer, right? Because they didn't get the recognition. Nowadays, it's more like people want to know who made this game, and people say like, oh, I love Naughty Dog because they made this game, and there's a lot of studio recognition. They say, I love this developer, I love what they do, and they've always done good, so I buy their games, and they generally end up pleasing me. So do you ever find that people may come up with, like I said, some vitriol or flack, and people say like, no, I mean, we like what they've done in the past. Did you ever get that kind of defense from your fans?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, let's face it, those non-single people out there, if you're in a relationship with someone where all you ever have is nice, happy, la-la fairyland, there's probably something going wrong, right? You've got to occasionally have a bit of a tiff. You're human. You know, okay, maybe it's just me. But absolutely, if there's situations where
You're not human?
That is deep, man.
That's
That is
deep.
deep shit.
And then if people are coming at you and there's on the record, absolutely, people will leap to unknown worlds as defense in that situation. Absolutely, and what is that? They'll turn around, but at the same time they'll have a go at us the next day. It's a natural cycle. It's got to happen. There's no fairyland.
Yeah, I have to say, sorry, that would love it. It's one of my favourite things now. As we've grown, somewhere along the way in the last 2 or 3 years, we've grown to a size where if someone comes on forums and he just, troll rant, you're evil scum, I hate you. I bought this game, I paid nearly $2 for it, and I hate you. And the nice thing is, we used to have to deal with that ourselves and try and not do what we talked about earlier, which is just go, you little prick. Because now we've grown to a certain to that size now where most of the time the fans themselves will dive in before we do. Okay, sometimes we have to rein them in a little bit and go, be nice, but we don't have to do it, which is, I'm very happy about.
If the developers believe in their game, then the fans will too.
Val?
Yeah, thank you very much.
No worries, thanks. Do we have enough time for one more? Okay. So if you guys want to tackle these guys just as they're walking out, then please do so. I'm sure you'll all be more than accommodating.
Thank you, Shannon, for moderating. If you notice, there's one more person on this panel than there normally would be. So congratulations to the lady on the far right for being able to handle all of this. It's fantastic. Well done. Are you going to provide relationship advice after this? No, don't ask me for relationship advice.
He's only offering relationship advice to those who are currently single.